Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Omnia Performance Podcast. I'm Tom McClure. I'm Head of Performance Nutrition here at Omnia Performance, and I'm joined today by Kieran Richardson, who is one of our head coaches here at Omnia. Kieran, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Seems quite topical, but I've been suffering with a cold for the past few weeks or so. The joys of now being a father and having a 10-month-old is that when he gets snotty, so do I, which leads us quite nicely into, we're going to talk a little bit about today about how to train and fuel smart throughout the winter. And we're dangling the carrot a little bit here as well today because we're going to be talking about the winter. And because it's coming, we're also going to let you in on a little secret. We are coming back this year with the Wintering, our online group coaching program. And if you want to find out more about it and get involved and be first over the line when it does go live. All the details and to join the mailing list are in the caption, in the description, in the comments, depending on what platform you're looking for. And while you're there, please kind of hit like, share, subscribe, tell a mate, tell your mum, tell your nan, etc. about this podcast. So let's dive into training and fueling smart through the winter, Kieran. We'll play a bit of ping pong. We'll go back and forth. But I'm going to send it your way first. I know we've got 3 points each. So, yeah, tell us about the winter. Tell us how to train smart and how we should approach it.
So when it comes to the winter, I like to think of essentially all of the limiters that get in people's way and what can we do to keep people training and motivated. And, of course, so many of us are motivated by a training goal. And unfortunately, particularly if you live somewhere pretty extreme, obviously we don't have it too bad in the UK. Winters get pretty grim, but we can definitely still train outside year round if we wanted. But we still deal with all of the usual weather impacts, particularly if we, for example, let's say I wanted to run my fastest ever mile. I'm going to have a hard time hitting race pace efforts outside in high wind, perhaps ground slippy, all of that. And it's a bit easy to get wrapped up in all of that. So what I often like to do, I love the old saying or proverb of, if you can't go fishing, spend time mending your nets. And I've always loved that because it just gives you this idea of, okay, you know what, maybe that one goal is probably not the most appropriate right now. So for example, the fast mile. But you know what, there's probably a gap that I can work on that is a bit more winter friendly. Let's say I haven't spent much time building my aerobic base. Well, you know what? If I can't do faster work and I don't feel safe, I can probably bimble along and get some easy miles in, for example. So there's always something that we can do. And this is obviously going to be very individual. Have a look at your own weaknesses. Perhaps it's using the poor weather as an excuse to spend more time in the gym, for example, building up your strength, your resilience, just working on those gaps. So wherever you are in your training journey, wherever your weaknesses are, if your primary training goals aren't necessarily the most appropriate for winter weather, well, have a look at what you can hit instead. So there we are. Sums it up. If you can't go fishing, mend your nets.
Love that. Very good. I'm going to write that down, actually. I like that. Superb. I love an analogy or a quote or a terminology. Look, from a nutrition point of view, I think the big overarching thing here that I'm going to talk about and just to be aware of is this time of year is that, look, let me myth bust. You cannot boost your immune function. You cannot supercharge it. You cannot take it above beyond its natural healthy baseline, no matter what supplement or brand or influencer will try and tell you over the coming months. But what you can do is support and maintain kind of optimal function. And what we don't want to do is avoid suppressing it. If we suppress our immune function, then we are at risk of getting poorly. And the biggest frustration I see with athletes that we work with over the winter is that if they're sick, they can't train. And then people get frustrated. So for me as a practitioner, it's often like, how do I just ensure someone is available to train? And there's 3 common things that I'm going to talk through. And the first main point here, Kieran, to discuss, and I'd be interested to get your views on this as well with your military background, is like the changes in habits that come with kind of fueling around winter, particularly if we're not training for that big primary goal, that arduous goal, or we're not doing, speed work. I see people maybe subconsciously fall into a bit of kind of low energy availability, or they don't fuel their training very well, or they don't think about post-workout nutrition. And the role of carbohydrate is vast, and we know, and people probably get sick of hearing me talk about fueling for the work required and eat your carbohydrates, etc. But it can support immune function. It can reduce that immune suppression. It can, balance cortisol levels. And then protein that we consume post and pre-workout as well can support, immune cell repair, resilience. Like, there's just so many benefits to making sure that even if you are in a bit of a deficit, you're not doing anything too extreme, I think, over the winter. I think that's what I'm trying to get at here. We want to minimise any risk of infection, any risk of fatigue, particularly if we're training hybrid, training concurrently, we might be a little bit more vulnerable and perceptible. So make sure, if you're in a deficit, or if you're, just be aware of your intake, make sure you're fueling your training, make sure you're supporting recovery, so you're not, like say, at the bottom of the barrel, so that if there is a cough or a cold going around the office or going around at home, as there is in my household right now, if you get it, you can get rid of it quickly because you've got a good immune system, or you don't even fall ill with it at all.
I think the fueling aspect's really, really good point. It's something I've experienced myself, particularly because in hard efforts, especially on the bikes, quite frankly, I hate being on the turbo, and I'll do everything I can to get outside and ride rather than being on the indoor trainer. So I've experienced this firsthand a lot, particularly last winter. I noticed I was feeling particularly weak on rides, and I was putting it down to, say, the wind or the weather or not being myself, until I realised I was coming back with half full bottles a lot of the time because it's cold. And it's these little things that when it's hot and you're sweating, you don't think, you don't even second guess yourself. You drink a huge amount, and particularly if you're using those water bottles to hold liquid carbs, that's where most of your fueling is coming, as it's very common for cyclists, so you don't have to faff around with gels. If you're not drinking enough, well, you're also not getting enough fuel. And it took me a few rides to realise, hang on, I'm really not hitting my fueling plan here. And perhaps that's a very significant part of why I'm feeling so weak. And lo and behold, making a more concerted effort to either stay on top of my fueling plan through other means, even if I'm not drinking as much, or just force myself to actually drink, even if I'm not necessarily feeling thirsty, or it's not pleasant because my water's freezing cold and my hands are frozen. Then just being less complacent with things made a huge difference. And I think it's very, very easy to take that for granted, particularly in the endurance sports, where obviously in the summer, as we said, it's just second nature. You're going to sweat, you're going to need a lot of water. Whereas, even in the winter, sure, it's cold at the time, but you still come back sweaty. You're still working hard. You still need to replenish everything that you've just lost. And it's very, very easy to lose track of that. So yeah, I think it's a very good point and well raised on.
Very good. Yeah, great. Some insight there into cycling and those habitual changes that happen in the summer, and probably not just in-day fluid consumption, but day-to-day fluid consumption. You're not going to be regularly filling that water bottle up on your desk. You're probably going to have maybe one cup of tea and then not drink between meals. So yeah, either being more deliberate with your hydration in and around training and away from it as well, or subbing it in with something that's a little bit more palatable, like say using warmer drinks through away from training across the day, having soups and ramens and things that can all help with hydration as well is a really good point there. Next kind of nutritional point for me, and again, it's just about, let's say, supporting that immune system, so that if there is a cough or a cold or a bug flying around, your body can deal with it as best we can. I'm not making any promises here that you're not going to get sick, but again, it's just, what are you doing to be proactive rather than reactive? I see so many people be like, oh, I'm poorly, I'm going to grab this supplement, I'm going to do that. Well, what are we doing to be proactive? And 70% of your immune cells are in your gut. So we need to look after your gut. We need to look after the gut year round, but particularly actually over the winter as well. We want to nourish it. We want to give it fiber. We want to give it probiotics. We want to give it prebiotics. So how do we do that? Sometimes I use a bit of a layered kind of checklist, and depending on how all in you are with this, let's look at kind of doing the basics first. Like, look at your current meals. Is there a serving of fruit and vegetables at breakfast, lunch and dinner? You then want to be able to try to get to the point where you're doing 5 servings of fruit and veg per day. That's the minimum kind of health recommendation. Now, if you're someone who exercises and trains, you need more than that, because you're going to deplete certain vitamins and minerals quicker, particularly things like vitamin C, particularly things like zinc, vitamin D, etc. So we want to try and bump that up. So particularly over the winter, I think it's a real good opportunity for soups and broths and stews and casseroles to just be throwing veg in, and then still lean on your fruits and vegetables, whether it kind of be at breakfast or snacks as well. I just want people to kind of eat the rainbow. I use the rough guideline of kind of 6 to 10 portions of fruit and veg per day. That's going to give you antioxidants, polyphenols, fibre. It's going to be great for your body's defence system and great for your gut health. The next level up to that is then looking at some probiotic and prebiotic food. So prebiotics, really easy to get from everyday food. Things like oats, bananas, garlic, onions, etc. And then probiotic rich food. If you're not on the kefir hype yet, then I 100% recommend you get down to your local supermarket. Go down the world food aisle where it's a lot cheaper. Go find the Polish kefir. You can buy things like Biotiful, protein shakes and other products as well, but kefir is the best probiotic food that's available. You can also use things like kimchi and sauerkraut, anything that's fermented, and these are just going to give your gut bacteria so many different and diverse kind of microbiomes. It's really going to help, let's say, just support and level it when potentially, if training volume's high, and we're immune suppressed or immune compromised, we want to be in a healthy place where we can deal with any kind of pathogens that are kicking around. The final one to mention is vitamin D. If we're in the Northern Hemisphere, winter, there's lower sun exposure, vitamin D deficiency is very, 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 very common. You only have to go on the NHS website in England and it will say every adult in the UK between September and March should be supplementing with vitamin D. You're going to need minimum of 1,000 IUs per day. If you really want to know what you need, you can get some blood work done and get a more accurate insight. But for me, it's an absolute non-negotiable to have. Vitamin D is fat soluble, so bonus point, take it with a meal that's got a little bit of fat in it and it will aid its absorption. So just to summarize that point there, fruit and veg, just be aware of how your diet might have changed from the summer to the winter. Look after your gut health, think about some probiotic, prebiotic rich food, and then make sure also you're supplementing with vitamin D to support that immune function.
Amazing. So easy to forget the colours when we're comfort eating in winter. And leading on nicely from comfort, I'm really passionate about this point because I think it's so important. Already I'm seeing a lot of the winter arc type trending posts and things like that, and the anti-treadmill brigade encouraging people to only get outside and all of that. And I think it's very important to remember that when it comes to long-term progress, the single most important thing that matters is consistency, not whether you ran outside or inside on the treadmill. And there's already enough obstacles, be that safety, particularly at night or for more vulnerable populations with the shorter daylight hours. A lot of people aren't going to want to run outside. And if you tell them that a treadmill is a less valid training tool because it's not as hard or any of this, then you've just put up one more obstacle for somebody who needed that training. So don't forget that consistency is the single most important thing. So whatever that form of training looks like, it's still perfectly valid and it is still going to help you. In terms of making outdoor training more helpful, so there's both safety and comfort. So bright colors, particularly if you're cycling. I know it's very cool to have all blacked out fits on the bike, but it breaks me every time I see it in sort of dawn and dusk hours, all black cyclists. Just so hard to see. So bright lights, reflective colors, whether you're running, cycling, whatever, just be seen and be safe. Prioritize safety above all else. If you're a cyclist, put some winter tires on. If you're going outdoors, just double check that people have seen you and either run or cycle defensively and just be sensible. In terms of clothing, and this is something that a lot of people get wrong, you see it all the time, people chucking on every layer under the sun and then wondering why they underperform in sessions. So a general rule of thumb, particularly with running, is to dress for about 10 degrees warmer than the outside temperature. So particularly if you're doing harder efforts, you really don't need many layers on, particularly in the UK. I find that even in the depths of a British winter, something like a running gilet and a windproof, and then as long as my extremities, so my hands, my ears are covered, I'm pretty much good to go. If it gets really cold, then you might want to cover up the legs with some running tights or something like that. But the vast majority of us don't need to be running in every single layer. If you're in either a colder climate or you're going for a longer, slower run where you're not going to generate as much heat, then sure, wrap up a bit warmer. But as long as you've got something like, say, a thermal base layer and you're covering your extremities, you're probably going to be good to go. So don't be disheartened if you see all these posts about the treadmill or getting outside or anything like that. The single most important thing is just that you keep training. So do whatever you can to remove those obstacles that are going to get in your way of consistency.
I love that, mate. there's a couple of really good points there, and things that actually I do personally that align with that, which makes me feel good about my choices in terms of seeing this time of year as like it hasn't got to be all in. It's about just being consistent with training and with nutrition, because for a lot of people as well, like we enter kind of silly season with social as well. You know, there might be work dues, birthday parties, Christmases, etc. Like, and sometimes it's just kind of picking your battles with training and knowing what your minimum effective dose looks like. And on that, my final point actually is a bit of a wild card, but there's very good evidence for it, and that's to talk about sleep and immunity. And if we're just looking again, the bigger picture about, you know, enjoying training over the winter often comes down to just that availability of being able to train and finding time in your week to train. If you have, you know, a social calendar to navigate around, I still see people on this kind of winter arc. I've got to get out. I've got to get my training session in. I've got to get outdoors. They go out sleep compromised. And we only have to look at the literature. If you've had less than 6 hours sleep, you are 4 to 5 times more likely to get ill. And you are 1.7 more times more likely to get injured. Now, that's not what you want over the winter. If you're using this as a bit of a base building phase, or you're just someone who likes to be able to train regularly, like I said, as soon as you don't have that ability to train, it can have a real, you know, mental kickback as well as, you know, physiological as well. So just again, like, adjust expectations over the winter. Nothing too extreme here, I think, is what is the overarching kind of theme we're talking about, is be really sensible with kind of when you're going to train, how much you're going to train. Can you do different and expose yourself to different modalities, different times? Like you said there about safety, like do different routes, things that are a little bit safer, go out a little bit later, different times of day. Be sensible with your nutrition. If you've got, silly season, there's no point staying up to 4 a.m. and then be like, I'm going to hit up my 3-hour brick ride in the morning. Like, move it or do less, or be sensible with it. So look, sleep is still a fundamental thing that we need to focus on. And if you're going to create what I call social jet lag by going to bed later and then trying to get up earlier, and for every hour you move your body clock, it can take up to 24 hours for your body to get back into your natural circadian rhythm again. So if you go to bed at 1 a.m, it's kind of like you've flown to New York overnight. Like, you have created social jet lag. And like I say, the impacts of illness and injury, I see it all too often. People kind of just spinning too many plates socially, trying to fit training in, and something gives, and it's normally your body. So just look after yourself over the winter. Be sensible with managing that overall kind of stress cup. And then you can just keep showing up and training, and then turn up, you know, in spring, feeling good, no injuries, no illness, and ready to kick on with whatever races or anything else you've got coming up over the year. Any thoughts on that, Kieran?
I think it's so common, particularly as you've mentioned, silly season. It's so common, particularly in the military. I see it all the time, where we've just got this sort of head down, do the work mentality for a lot of people, where they'll go out. It's almost seen like a badge of honor to be able to go get a hard session in after a session of drinking. And there's people often say these sort of truisms, as it were, that, you know, soldiers should be able to do that, but they then in the same breath will be surprised that, you know, their bodies are breaking down by 30 or 40 unnecessarily. So it's one of these things, the writing's kind of on the wall. We don't have to look very far to see the impact of trying to force your body through these times. So just be sensible, exactly as you said. I see it all the time, and there's just no need for it, particularly around alcohol and lack of sleep. Just be mindful, one, of obviously dialing back those things. There's no need to be absolutely sending it for an entire month and essentially just write off a month of your year because it's December and anything goes. But then likewise, if you have sort of pushed the boat out a little bit, then be mindful of your actual condition the next day.
Very good. Yeah, covering your bases, isn't it? I think, look, in summary here, unless you've got anything else to add, Kieran, I think, look, it's just about training smart, fueling smart, recovering well, being a little bit adaptable over winter, and being okay with that. And look, and if you need some help with that or support with that, obviously we offer that at a one-to-one level. We've got group coaching options available. We've got subscription options available. If you want a little bit more info, check out the Omnia Performance website, resources, training support, and you can even book a call with one of the coaches to chat through whether you need some help over winter or you need a plan for next year. Thank you for listening, and we'll see or hear you again very soon.